Don't worry about it. There we go. We're live now, Petula.
Excellent.
Hello.
Hello, Lillias.
Oh, it's very nice to meet you on screen because I know we've talked on the phone.
We have indeed, yes.
I'm a patron of the Society of East Anglian Watercolourists and I'm a member of the Royal Institute of Painters in Watercolour. And as you know, I judged with Julia Sorrell to award the Royal Institute of Painters in Watercolour prize this year. And who should win but you with your lovely painting, Waterlilies. I know it'll come up on the screen. It's coming up right now. There you go.
There it is, yes.
Absolutely beautiful. You probably look at it and think of all the problems it might have given you, but I look at it and I think it's absolutely lovely. I'm going to ask you about how you went about doing it, but one thing I wanted to point out at the very beginning was its scale, because I think a lot of people don't mention scale, but it's so important, isn't it, when you look at work, how big it actually is. And the problem with this whole digital thing now, when you're judging or when you're just looking and browsing, is that you don't actually know how big it is. And this was a surprise for me because I thought this picture was a lot bigger than it actually was. So for everybody that's watching, the picture itself is 26 centimeters about, you said, I remember. Yes, which is quite small for what I imagined. So I wanted to get that kind of out of the way so people can, when they're looking at it, they can kind of imagine what its scale is like. So I suppose my first question is, Petula, can you tell us how you went about it and why you did it?
Can I say a little bit about the scale first?
Yes, do.
Actually, 26 by 26 is actually quite big for me. I'm going to show you something and then perhaps you might understand a little better. This is the sort of thing I've been doing in my illustration life. Stamps. So I work very small usually. So this actually is quite a big piece for me, and I'm hoping they'll get bigger still. But how did I go about it? What was your question, Lillias? How did I?
That was it, really, the process. I think people are often interested in hearing about the process. I remember when we talked about it very briefly together, you mentioned masking, you mentioned the loosening up that's happened since you started doing your own work as opposed to illustrative work and that kind of thing.
Well, it started it was at the beginning of lockdown and my classes had just ended and I just felt the need to carry on doing some painting for myself and to keep my students motivated as well. And what I did was send them step-by-step guides. I'd photograph the painting as I was doing it and send them emails with the technique that I use so that if they wanted to, they could work on it at home or something similar at home. But it started by spotting the water lilies in the pond opposite where I live. They were quite inaccessible down a steep slope, so I have got a large archive of photographs and drawings that I've kept over the years. So I worked from photographs and some drawings that I had. The way I work is probably a bit different to a lot of artists in that I don't draw directly onto the watercolour paper. Because my background, as you probably know, is as a graphic designer. I trained as a designer, but actually never worked as a designer. I always worked as an illustrator. So I tend to do my drawings on layout paper or even tracing paper, and then I move them around and jiggle them about until I end up with what I feel is a good composition. And sometimes I might even use Photoshop for this. I scan them into my laptop and I move them around until I'm happy with the composition, which I think is really important.
It is. It's the most important thing, because if you don't get that right at the beginning, you're stumped.
Absolutely. It's like the foundations to a building, isn't it?
Absolutely right. Yes.
It's really important. So once I'm happy with the layout, I'll transfer it onto the watercolour paper using graphite paper or rub down paper.
Interesting.
And then I'll start this way. If you draw on watercolour paper and then you rub out, obviously you spoil a surface, don't you? So this way you do no drawing at all on the paper, but just transfer the image down and it's ready to paint. So when I've done that, as you said, I mask some of the areas that I want to remain white to keep the white of the paper. And then I literally mix up my watercolour paints and wet the paper completely and flick and brush and spray, use a toothbrush, try and get a really loose washy background. That's the first stage. I just have a glass of
There's quite a lot of structure in your background as well, of course, but that's filled up.
So the blue would go on first, and then I'd let everything dry, and then what I try to do is work with what the watercolour has given me rather than try and tidy it up too much, because by nature I tend to be quite detailed. I started off doing botanical illustrations for a lot of the work that I did, so my work is quite tight really. So by working in this way, it loosens me up. So I try and not tidy up too much, and then I literally work with what the painting's given me and work back into it. So I might start with the centre of the flowers, and then start picking out some of the detail around the petals where they cast a shadow, and slowly I build up the painting.
It's quite interesting, isn't it, how you're talking about what the painting gives you. So you've laid down your first wash and dropped in some stuff maybe and done some sort of random things, and then you let it dry, and then you can see, and I've often found that myself, that once you get to that stage you actually start to see things. And it always reminds me of I think somewhere in Michelangelo's letter he says that he can actually see what's within the marble before or while he's carving it. And I think it's the same sort of thing. It must be your imagination coming out and showing you things that you didn't intentionally do, but you can then work on.
Watercolour's wonderful for that, isn't it? Because it will give you things that you don't expect. It's a kind of serendipity of it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy accidents. You'll get, I try and encourage run-backs, and you can see with the water lilies, I actually dripped paint from the top of the paper and let it run right through. And I might sort of knock that line back a bit, but because it's a watery painting, I quite like that idea of having the water coming through the water.
Yes, it definitely has the right effect, doesn't it?
It gives it layers.
I really like the feeling of recession in it as well. You know, the going back to the water lilies in the background. I think that composition from the composition side looks really good.
The leaves are important because as well as the flowers, they're beautiful shapes, and you've got the very dark colours and the light colours and the round shapes, and you can compose with those and make it interesting, make the background interesting.
But so, I mean, when you were doing illustration before, did you ever do illustration which wasn't tight, which was looser like this? Or was this something new to you, to be using watercolour in this way as opposed to as a graphic designer illustrator?
A lot of it was detailed and tight, yes. More recently, I've been doing greetings cards and things like that, and some of those have been a lot looser. But I've done all sorts of things. I started off with children's books, actually, when I first left college, and did that for a number of years. And then I moved on to more sort of commercial work, like packaging design and illustration. But that did tend to be quite detailed, actually. Yes.
So, I mean, do you consider yourself a sort of a new painter in this way? I mean, you've obviously, I don't know whether you're still working in the graphic side of things, or are you retired?
Not a lot, no. I mean, it was, to be honest, the deadlines are pretty horrific when you're doing commercial work, and I just reached a point where I didn't want to work like that anymore.
Yeah.
I do still have an agent, and I do some work and send him ideas for things. But no, mainly I'm doing paintings, and yes, I think my work is getting much looser and hopefully a bit more painterly.
Yes. Yeah. So it was a surprise, hopefully, a nice surprise for you to win the award.
I was delighted. It was such a surprise. Really.
Well, I know I chose it. I don't know. I did mention it. I think I chose it with Julia Sorrell, who's also a member of the RI. And it was completely unanimous. You know, the minute I said, "Well, I quite like this one," she went, "Oh, good, because I do too." So you know, it wasn't a matter of anybody persuading anybody. It was absolute hit. Because you had some other pictures in as well, I think, in the exhibition. One was actually a landscape, if I remember rightly.
Yes,
so,
it was the
Hoarfrost Garden.
Yes. Yeah. That again is a sort of more imaginative piece, and it's a recent one that, you know, maybe shows the development of where I'm going. Hopefully,
yes,
it's very, very nice nowadays not to have to work to somebody else's ideas.
Yes.
To be able to do, it's a luxury really to be able to paint what I want to paint. So
yes,
I enjoy
it's
that.
like, I mean, we get that always with commission work as well. You know, I've got to the point where I will do commissions, but only if it's something that I would have done almost anyway.
Really,
you know?
yes.
Yeah. It's got to be something that I really am inspired by. Otherwise, it really shows in the picture.
Yeah.
Are you doing any? Do you do commissions for your work?
I do. Yes, I do. But less than I used to.
Right. Yeah. And when you do your teaching, are you teaching illustration or are you teaching watercolour in general?
No, I'm teaching watercolour painting.
Right.
And I've been doing it for a number of years. So I'm kind of led by the students, really, what they want to do. So we cover landscape, you know, sort of decorative, flower painting, still life, you know, but I'm trying to be led by what they would like to do.
And have you been able to do it remotely during lockdowns and things?
No, I haven't really. I mean, I did try doing some videos, which I found it so stressful. I thought, no, I can't do it. This is too much. But as I say, what I've been doing is photographing my paintings that I'm doing, and at different stages as I go along, and sending them step-by-step guides, which they seem to enjoy. I hope.
Yes, I think it's sort of amateur painters or people who are just taking up or experimenting a bit. I often think that that's a structure which is very convenient for the teaching process, because they can use it and they can learn by it, but they can go off piste all the time if they want, you know, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I do encourage them to go off piste, as you say. Often they'll, you know, do their own thing, but they do, when they look at a painting, they just don't know where to start. And if they see how I've done it,
absolutely, yeah. And also, if they gain the confidence of doing something when it is structured and step by step, then they're far more confident when they move on to doing something else.
Yes,
you know,
indeed.
aren't they?
Yeah.
And it gives them the courage, you know, encourages them to start experimenting themselves, because they've actually seen a process and worked it out themselves. So I think it makes a lot of difference.
It does. And I mean, they give me ideas too, which is good. I hope they're listening to this.
Well, you should have told them all about it. They'll be there. Yeah, so I think you must have used a fair amount of masking fluid on that painting.
Actually, when we spoke, I said that I masked the whole flowers, but I've looked back at the step-by-steps that I did and sent them, and I didn't. So
that's interesting. But you would have done a wide margin of fluid.
Yes.
Because when you were dropping your wash down the paper, you had to be quite careful it didn't jump over into where you didn't want it.
Well, I have removed it in places, and I do tend to work back sometimes with white gouache. So,
okay.
So if you look, I'm trying to point at the picture, which is silly because it's not going to. But some of the, if you see in the lily on the left-hand side, you can see lines going down it. I think I remember getting them in and then blotting them out, and then maybe putting a bit of white gouache over them as well. So you, as well as adding colour, as you know, you can take colour away. So
yes, you can lift it off. I'm a complete purist. I never use any body colour.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting to see, because lots of people do. I just don't know why I make my life difficult, but I do.
Well, yes, it is. Well, I know it's not. Yes, I know that is strictly. I suppose you shouldn't use white gouache, but
no. Oh, there's absolutely no should about it at all. You just do what you want to create what you want, and if that's what you need to do, then you do it. I've got absolutely no objection to it. I'm not a, I'm not a evangelical purist watercolor painter at all. Well, I mean, if you think about it, the Royal Institute of Watercolor Painters accepts acrylics and water-based media. It is we get a lot of body paint, so
yes,
it's very acceptable in the watercolor.
I try to keep it to a minimum, but it is very useful sometimes. I think
it's very useful.
Yes,
yeah, very useful indeed. Yes, well, there we go. I'm just wondering if there's anything else you'd like to talk about the painting. I mean, did you do those little yellow the bits right at the end? What was the final touch? I always like to know what people do to just sort of finish it off.
The centres were put in at the beginning, I think.
Right.
We all seem to start with the centres, and I'll sort of work all over the painting and build it up gradually.
Yes.
And the last bit I would do would be to put in the really dark darks.
Yes, that's building up to darks, isn't it? Which is quite common.
Stand away.
Process.
Maybe put it away for a couple of days.
Yes, I do that.
Yeah, do you?
Yes.
And then go back to it and squint at it, and you need to see the darks and the lights. And if you put, the darker darks in, just sort of make it sparkle, don't they? They just bring.
Yeah, they do. The tonal bit is so important, I think. And also I think leaving a picture can often be a very good thing, like you just said. I'll turn it front to the wall, and I'll go away feeling absolutely exasperated, and then I'll come back 2 days later and think, oh, that's not so bad, I might keep going.
I always say that to my students. Yes, put it away for a couple of days, then go back to it with fresh eyes, and then you can see what needs to be done.
Absolutely right.
Very useful tip, actually.
Yes, it is a useful tip. I'm always trying to think of useful tips with people. I'm just wondering where we've got the questions. Can you see the questions anywhere?
I can.
Because I've got mine up on a big screen, so I
haven't
can't.
got any questions. They're more comments and questions, actually.
Nice comments, I hope.
Nice comments, very nice comments. Thank you. Yes, they are.
Well, okay. I think we're probably done. And it's been really nice speaking to you, Petula. And congratulations again on a really special painting. I noticed it was sold on the website, which is not surprising at all.
Yes, it has. Yes, it's the first painting I've sold through the SEA.
Oh, that's wonderful. I think things like the Society of East Anglian Watercolours, they just encourage so many people.
It's been brilliant. I've only been a member for a year, and I'm just so glad I joined. It's fantastic.
Good. Yes, it's so well run. Such a lot of encouragement going on. I think it's brilliant.
Yes, indeed.
Keep painting. It was lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Bye bye.
Bye bye then. Bye.